Hello, this is Charity Ngugi-Latz, and I'm talking to you all the way from Germany. I'm so glad that you're listening to me at this moment, and I'd like to connect to you. I'm talking on the subject of domestic violence and abuse, and I'm talking about fatigue. And one of the questions that most people usually ask me is, why does a victim of domestic violence, whether it's a he or a she, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just walk away? Before we go into the topic, I'd just like to invite you to subscribe to my channel, please, so that you can be able to get the content on time, and so that we can also be able to share and give support to all those people out there who might be victims of domestic violence and they do not know. And also because domestic violence is a menace, it's very global, and on top of that, it affects so many people. But so many people are not ready to come out. They're not strong enough to come out. They are vulnerable. They feel ashamed, and they don't want to even talk about it, and they deny it. So I'm going to talk about three particular major reasons, and I would like to concentrate more today on the Black migrant population. This goes for other people, but I want specifically to talk about this particular area because right now here in Europe and in America, and especially in Europe, let me talk about Germany. We are under isolation. We are still keeping into isolation. We've got the third wave coming on. Coronavirus is very, very, very much a big issue. And so there is a lot of loneliness and a lot of isolation. People have to adhere to some certain rules. And what happens when people have to stay at home and at very close quarters with their abuser in a very long space of time, because before at least there's a chance that the abuser goes to work. So there are some times when somebody is free and can be able to do one or two things on their own and have a little bit of peace. But a lot of people are at home, they're not working. And even if they are working, most of the people are working from home, or they're on half pay and not working. So there's a lot of time of being together. So there's a lot of time for the abuser to use their aggressive tactics and abuse their victims. So one of the biggest issues here is isolation. Already, a victim is usually isolated. That is one of the biggest tactics. They are not allowed to call. They are not allowed to even be on the internet. And when they are there, it is controlled. Like, for example, they are not allowed to go onto Facebook or Instagram, most of this social media, where at least they can even relax and see what their friends are doing and communicate with their friends. So they are hindered from that. They are isolated, and even their calls are controlled. If they talk, like, for example, and they call back home, like, for example, like I'm a Kenyan and you call back to Kenya, the abuser wants you to speak in English. You're not allowed to speak in Kiswahili or Kikuyu for this instance, for that matter. You speak in English and you speak near them so that they might hear what you have to say. And if they're thinking that you're having a lot of fun by laughing and everything, they'll make sure that they'll cut the phone loose. And you're not allowed to invite friends. And they'll use the pandemic also as a way of actually telling you, giving you a lot of fear. And because they also isolate you and don't allow you to go to school, so you might not even know the German language. You might never get to know the German language. The German language that you get to know is the abusive words, the words they abuse you. They tell you are so stupid to go to school. And the only reason why you don't know the language is because you're not going to school. And you're so not also, if you don't go to school, how are you going to communicate with anybody? And the language that we use here for specifically, I'll be talking about here in Germany, the kind of harassment that a lot of people are going through is the harassment of isolation. When you're locked up, when you become a prisoner of somebody, and you're not allowed to communicate with your community. And especially now with the pandemic issue, it becomes very, very difficult. So why doesn't somebody leave? You always ask this question. People don't leave for so many reasons, because they don't even know that there's help out there. Can you imagine if you are locked in? How would you ever know that there's help out there? You'd be so scared. The only person that you know is the person that your abuser has allowed you to know. And even if we go further, even if you were to communicate with anybody outside, what language are you going to communicate? Language is a very powerful weapon. So you are not allowed to communicate. You don't know the language. You don't know the people. Number two, what even makes it worse? You are Black. You're an African. So, Africans, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, we come lower level. It comes at a lower level. And now, when you are not educated, then you only go further to affirm about that we are illiterate, we are not learned. And that is not the truth. Okay, so somebody might not be able to live because they have nobody to communicate with. They have nobody to help them. They think there's no help out there, but that is not the case. But they are not aware because they have no information. They might also, even if they were to have that information, let us assume that they have gone to the school. Let us assume that they have even done the first levels of the education. Even if they were to do that, and even let's assume even this is also in Africa now, that even somebody is allowed to, is educated, they are working. Do you know what happens? You are isolated again from your family and friends. You are kept away you are so isolated, you can no longer talk with your family. And then there's the other reason that when you run away to your family, they tell you, no, go back to where you came from, you're married, because the abusers are very tactful people. The way they present themselves out there and the way they present themselves in the house are two totally different people. It's just the first time when you ever met this abuser, you never met them as an abuser. And people always blame people and say, or always blame the victim and say, what are you doing with him? Why could you have been married to such a person? Naturally, you got married to them because you never, ever, ever dreamt that this person was like that. Of course, they showed you their good ways, their good color, their good personality, and then they changed. Just like sometimes, even within that abusive marriage, when they realize that you're waking up, they do sometimes change for a short period of time just to bring you back to where they want you to be, and then the cycle starts all over again. Another time why they also in our cultures and our family, they can't pressurize somebody to stay in an abusive marriage. They tell you to persevere. A woman must, especially with women, a woman must persevere. And when it comes to the men are fearing to say they are abused because how can a man be abused by a woman? What kind of a man are you to be abused by a woman? Huh? You should be the head of the family and she should be the tail. What kind of business is that? What kind of nonsense is that you're telling us? Go back there and sort out your wife. You're not hitting her enough or you're not teaching her good manners. Then there are some things like that. And then now for us, people who are here in the diaspora, you could stay in that marriage because you fear to be deported. And that is real. And also the shame, even if you are to be deported and you are to go back home, what would you go back and tell your people? They would always fault you. They would say it was your fault that you were deported. So I'm going to come back with the part 2 because I don't want to make the videos very long. And we are going to discuss more points and then come up with the solutions. And I just hope that you subscribe. And you know what I love most? I would love some discussion. I'd love some questions. It makes it so much easier to make a video. And when I'm answering to the questions, it makes it easier that I'm answering to what concerns people. I want it to be a communication between me and you. Tell me what you'd like to know. Ask any question about what happens here. How is it sorted out? So that it's good that you make yourself aware before you start taking those planes and going to foreign countries. You better know the reality is different. Mambo kwa ground ni mambo mengine. Kwa ground si vile mnaonanga wazungu. Hao ni watu wengine kabisa, wanabadilikanga. Hivyo tu ndio nilikuwa nataka kuambia. Haya, kwaherini, ni siri nimewaibia. Bye bye, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow we shall continue. I will have more points. Thank you.